Hi there, Let's Talk Sports fans. Welcome to a new show on the Let's Talk Sport Network. This is NCAA from the UK with my new co-host, Naji.
Hey everyone.
You can see what I've been doing all afternoon, can't you, Naji?
Very nice. Nicely done. Yeah.
It got some of the flags in, it got some of the big names in at least. So I thought it was a good intro. So as I say, I appreciate you jumping on, Naji. I kind of lean on you when we're talking about college football because I know you watch it avidly. You're a big Oregon's fan, as you can see from the shirt hanging in the background. I have a Knowles tie-in, and I have supported the Knowles for a while now, from a long time, but I'm not as avid and don't watch it as often as you. So I appreciate you jumping on, giving us kind of an intro rundown of what the NCAA football is all about.
No worries. My pleasure. I'm looking forward to it. College is so different without being different. It's weird. It's really hard to define what college is compared to the NFL. But it's sometimes I think I prefer it, and then it comes to Sunday and I forget about it, obviously. But yeah, it's two different worlds.
And just on that, as you say, it is a different world when you start to dip your toe into it, because as I think what most fans do is they kind of find the NFL, they start watching the big games, they start watching the NFL, and then they start hearing about the draft, and they start seeing these players mentioned in their colleges, and they kind of find the NCAA and the college game afterwards. It is a completely different game, and it is quite confusing for sort of new people watching it. Like the conferences, the Power 5 conferences, can you kind of give us an understanding or your understanding of what that means and how they are kind of put together?
Yeah, so the thing with colleges is, I'm guessing back in the day when money wasn't so avidly, from broadcasting and all that kind of stuff, traveling across country wasn't so easy. So the conferences work in a way that is kind of geographical. So the Power 5 is basically the United States divided in 5 different counties, massive kind of regrouping of them. So obviously if we start east, we got I have the map somewhere and I forgot. It's basically the Big Ten is kind of northeast, which is
Boston, New Jersey, all that sort of up there. You mean those sort of old colleges?
Yeah, so Maryland, kind of, New York State, Minnesota is in there, which is kind of in the middle, and this is where it's all fallen down apart because conferences have kind of moved and people have gone in and out of it, obviously, over the years. But so yeah, it's this Big 10, Big 12, which is more Texas kind of thing, so more towards Mexico border and like the middle. The Pac-12, which is completely West Coast, so all the way from Washington State all the way down to California, and then the ACC, which is kind of a weird mix-up of everything. And then obviously the biggest one that everybody will talk about is the SEC, which is the Southern East Conference, which is where all the big colleges are right now, and the conference that dominates. But yeah, that's the 5. As I said, it's kind of geographical, but over the years teams have moved out of it and moved into it. And as we speak, there's a big one happening. So USC and UCLA, which are the 2 Los Angeles colleges, are going to leave the Pac-12 to go into the Big Ten, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So they're going to join, go and play Ohio State and Penn State and Rutgers and all that kind of Iowa and all those colleges, which is going to be a big shamble in the Pac-12. And the Big 12 is getting bigger because Texas and Oklahoma are moving as well. And then Cincinnati.
I was going to say Cincinnati are moving somewhere else.
So Cincinnati is moved. Cincinnati, BYU, which is where Fred Warner comes for our 49ers fan, and Zach Wilson for our Jets fan. That's where he comes from, which is the Mormon University. They're moving into the Big 12 with Houston and UCF, which is University of Central Florida, with their best in Orlando. So you see how it starts being like all messed up.
That geographical aspect starts to drift, as you say.
It starts to
now that teams
blend all together.
You think
Yeah,
that's
it's a little
drifted, as
bit.
you say, it's drifted because of the money that's coming now from TV coverage, and
Yeah,
it's
that's
a
it.
massive game now, isn't it?
Yeah, so Texas and Oklahoma joining the SEC, which is obviously the big one, and trying to make this super conference, I guess. So they're moving kind of towards the east. It's a little bit like the NFL. And, we used to have the NFC West with St. Louis, which is kind of right bang in the middle
And
of.
Atlanta at some point, wasn't it? Atlanta
Yeah, at
used to
some
be
point the
NFC,
Atlanta
yeah.
was in it. So, it's kind of geographical, but also not really.
And I guess, as you say, talking about UCLA and USC moving out of Pac-12 into the Big Ten, does that for them raise up their sort of level of competition? Is that what they're looking for? Is that what teams are moving around to kind of balance the level of competition, or is it just a money thing?
I think it's a bit of both. I don't know, because the Pac-12 is, in my opinion, being an Oregon fan, obviously, I think the Pac-12 is one of the most contested conference. It's always all of the teams in there every year can kind of bump into each other, and I know Oregon has kind of been at the top for the past few years, but Arizona's gone up, and then Utah State has gone up, and Colorado was very good a few years back, and then USC was obviously massive, sort of late 90s and all that, and UCLA has been good and bad, and Stanford has been good and bad, with Andrew Luck and Christian McCaffrey. Cal was pretty good when they had Goff and when they had Aaron Rodgers. It's just that conference I think, is really tight. Like the bottom bar is really close to the top, and it doesn't take much. And we talk about recruitment in a bit and why it's quite fun, the NCAA. But I think they're moving to the Big Ten. They're going to a division which is a lot more spread out. You got Ohio State, Michigan at the top, and then the rest of the bottom is very hit and miss. Iowa sometimes is good, Iowa State sometimes is good, but apart from that, it's Penn State. It's kind of, since they lost Barkley, has not been quite as strong as they are, and so I think there's been a bigger gap in that conference. So they're maybe joining something that's a little bit more easy to win. Although Ohio State is quite a strong, contender,
but
so
more chance of getting closer to the top.
Yeah, to bigger games, maybe into the playoffs. Yeah, so
and no doubt
ultimately,
there is a money into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Ultimately, I think it's a money and a TV deal kind of thing where they.
Yeah, I was wondering because if they're playing Ohio State and Michigan, they're going to get bigger TV deals for those games than maybe some of the other games, aren't they? So it helps to keep the coffers full.
Yeah, it also probably is a push by the LA County to try and get their college football up the ground, because I don't know if you watch USC had a few weeks back, but they play at the Rose Bowl, which is iconic stadium, obviously, and you'll hear that name if you start watching the college football quite a lot. The Rose Bowl in Los Angeles is this very old stadium where is that where they played the first Super Bowl? It might have been. Can't remember.
First or second one. That wasn't the first one. But they definitely play Super Bowls at the Rose Bowl, and
Yeah, so iconic stadium, years old. But it's USC, UCLA, and they were both ranked in the tens, so quite high rank, and we'll talk about ranking in a bit as well. And the stadium was not even half full. So it's just thinking the LA crowd
and that's
clearly
odd, isn't clearly buying into it, because you see, from the outside, you see college stadiums are almost, at times bigger than NFL stadiums, and they are always full. Most of the time,
absolutely.
Full. It seems like the experience and the atmosphere at college games are almost, more partisan and bigger than NFL games. It seems, because it seems like a closer tie into US people, because it's a lot of it is the school they went to, so it's not necessarily just the team or the town they live in. So there's a much closer bond, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And most of those universities are in smaller areas, in smaller towns than NFL teams. So it attracts a lot more people within that region. And also, as you say, if you've been an alumni, if you've been to that university, you're inclined to be a supporter of that program.
And I've kind of always tallied it slightly with, the football teams in the UK, that the fan support for their college games is almost similar to that. You pick your team, or you that is your team, because you've gone to college, that's your team. And it doesn't matter if you're, you haven't been to college in the States, you're 40 years out of college, you'll still be supporting.
Absolutely,
you'll still be supporting whatever college it is. And it's quite a similar type of thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's very similar to, and I think it's older than the NFL, or
Mm.
it's because football was invented at Rutgers, which is one of the Big Ten university. So I think there's more kind of that whole, history of the game
Mm.
being a college game to start with before becoming professional and what it is these days, which obviously is completely different.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of that. I think you're right. It ties more into kind of soccer. Sorry to use that word, but it's easier.
Mm.
Um, yeah, it's the team that's right next to you, so you're going to support that because you can go every week, can't you? So
Yeah.
it's a lot easier.
And one of the things you just touched on when you were going through sort of that intro there is the seedings, and the seedings are quite an interesting way of kind of ranking the teams. Even though, as you say, that it's kind of like the Division One teams or FBS teams or whatever it's called. I can't quite keep up. So I think they're still called FBS now.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, FBS teams. But there's as you say, there's the big five conferences. There's not five other small. The other five conferences. The seeding kind of goes 1 to 25. Mostly is the top 25 they need to find out.
Yeah.
And it's like how do you work out who's number one seed out of a college group of 131 teams? It's
that's the problem, isn't it? You can't do a ranking by conference and by record itself because there'll just be a bunch of tied teams that haven't played each other and nobody plays each other. There's far too many teams. So the way it works, there's two of them, and the most important one is the AP one, which is the Associated Press one, which is, I can't remember how many press journalists write their top 25, of which they think the best teams obviously is our number one, and the 24 next one best. Because if you're 25, you're still a very good team out of, as you said, 130 odd, and there's Division 2 and 3 as well, which aren't included in this. This is just for Division 1. So they write down the 125, and then if you're first, you get 25 points, and then they compile all that, and then it goes down to points, and then whoever gets the most points is number one, and all that. So the way they obviously order their ranking is record. Obviously, if you're undefeated, usually you're more likely to be at the top. Strength of schedule is really important, and this is why playing in a Power 5 conference is a lot harder than playing in one of those lesser. I don't like saying it because there's some very good team in the MAC and the ASC and all that kind of stuff. But if you're going to play in those slightly less good conferences that have less good team, or if you're going to beat teams that everybody knows they're not very good, and you're going to win 70-3 or whatever, it doesn't weigh as much as if you're going to beat a top 10 or top 25 team.
It doesn't get as much weight with the journalists.
No, yeah, that's it.
Exactly.
I think
everyone's like, well, you're gonna score 60 points on them. If you don't score 60, you actually lose.
Yeah, almost, absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, it's kind of part of one of the most fun thing to watch, and it's obviously it's a point of debate and contention. Should you be number 8? Should you be number 10? Should you be? Oh, but you've beaten this team and they're ahead of you. But yeah, but that team has beaten that team, which is now it's all a higgledy-piggledy thing, where you have to kind of like follow week by week what's going on.
And it does it fluctuates constantly week by week. It's not like number one seed and that's it. It's kind of like you're one this week, but next week
if you lose to number 2. Yeah, you'll go down and you'll climb up and down depending whether you win or not. And who you play and how you play is also very important. So if you have a really scrappy game against a team that you should have beaten easily, as you said, then you might go down a bit if another team has beaten a good team quite handedly,
or even got close, as you say. Even if they lose by 2 or 3 or whatever, and everyone's expecting a blowout, you actually still.
Yeah. So if you manage to maybe clip the number 1 seed and hang around the game and make it difficult for them, that's going to boost your ranking a little bit. Yeah, it's really interesting. There's not much to just go and read it, and then just read the top 25, see what the teams are, and see who plays each other, because that's how TV schedule starts making thing,
isn't it?
Yeah, and especially if you're new into the game, this is where you need to start watching games. Don't start to watch Alabama because somebody told you they were the best team or whatever, because they might play a horrible team on that week and it'll be a boring game. Go and watch top 25 team play each other. That's the best thing you can do. And the closer they are to each other, the more likely it's gonna be a good game and it's gonna be interesting. So that's advice number one. If you want to get into it and you don't really have a team, you don't know where to go, look at the schedule. Because it starts at 5 o'clock. It's a little earlier than the NFL. And then have a look, see if this number 13 is playing number 11, to go and watch that. It's probably going to be a good game.
That's the game for the week, yeah.
Yeah,
because as you say, you can get ones, number one seed playing, nobody's even seeded, and that could be an 80, 90-point blowout and just completely one-sided, not worth watching. Yeah.
No, it's not worth watching at all. The discrepancy between levels, between the very top and the very bottom in the NCAA is absolutely massive. It's ridiculous. Because on one end, you've got people that just go into university and are pretty good at playing football, so they're going to play and try and get scholarship. And on the other end, you've got people that want to make it to the NFL and become professional
athletes. They just happen to be at university as a stepping stone to professional athletics, rather than you're a university and you're kind of I play football as well.
Yeah, that's it. So obviously, the level is quite drastically lopsided on that side, and you see some blowouts weekly. It happens. Try and stay away from those games. They're not very interesting. They're not going to teach you anything.
It won't give you a fair representation of the college games.
No, unless you support one team and you want to see them scoring 12, 14 touchdowns in a game. I'm sure it's fun.
Could work. The seedings, though, and throughout the season, as I said, as we've just said, they go up and down, fluctuate depending on teams you play and whoever the journalist decided he had a bad day or whatever else. Do they actually designate anything towards the championship in the bowl games, or is it more on your records?
So no, the playoff is a completely different entity from the. So I did say there was two rankings. The first one was the AP. The other one is the coach poll, which are usually very close to each other. And sometimes teams have flipped one or two, but it's usually very close to each other. But no, when it comes to the playoffs, which is it's fairly new. I can't 2014, 2015, maybe it was the first playoff game. The Oregon, Florida State one. Can't remember.
It's not. Yeah, it's definitely within.
It was Marcus Mariota versus Jameis Winston, so it wasn't that long ago.
Can't be that long ago, yeah.
No. So that's something that's fairly new, and it's a whole new committee, which is the CFB committee, the College Football Committee, that decides on the top four. I mean, they will take obviously in consideration the ranking the whole season. So if you've been a number one the whole season and you've dealt with everyone, you're probably going to be number one. But especially 4 or 5, because obviously if you're number 5, you're not making it to the playoff, you're going to have to go and play a ball somewhere else. And 4 plays number 1 in semi-final. So this is where debate starts creeping up, where I think this year especially we're going to see, is it going to be Michigan? Is it going to be Alabama? Is it going to be maybe Oregon if they can make a strong push? Yeah, there's a few teams that have a potential to be number 4, and the committee is obviously looking at trying to make the playoff entertaining, not one-sided like it has been in the past. And so I'm thinking maybe Michigan might drop a little bit. See if who can potentially go and compete against Georgia or Tennessee or whoever's going to finish number 1. And see if we can get a decent semi-final and then a decent final after that. So, it's a whole new committee that votes specifically on the playoffs, which is quite interesting. It is planned on being extended to 6 teams, and then 8 teams in the future. I can't remember exactly the year. It might be 2025. They go into 6. So the first 2 will have a bye, and then there'll be a semi-final, quarterfinal, and then semi-final, and then final. So
so similar to the NFL sort of playoff in a way.
I think they're trying. I think they're trying to make it a bit more interesting towards the end of the year. And
but the issue with that is, I suppose it almost guarantees you know who your 6 kind of playoff teams are almost going to be, and you can say that mostly as kind of the next question I was going. The big 6 or maybe the big 7 or 8 in college doesn't tend to fluctuate much like the NFL, does it? And, the NFL has the joy of the draft where worst teams get best players. The NCAA recruitment doesn't quite work in the same way, does it?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't fluctuate much, but I think, especially with the NIL deal that they made, I think things might start to change very slowly because players, for the people that don't know, the NIL is the name, image, and likeness, which allows players to sell their image, their name, or their likeness to brands to monetize themselves because they're not allowed to be paid by university. Even though we all know
officially we're not allowed
yeah,
to get
they're
scholarships
not,
and shoe deals and
scholarship
everything else
and
happening.
and oh, here's a flat. That's not, there's no one in it. You have it, but we didn't give it to you, kind of thing.
Didn't pay you a salary, but hey, you're living
that's
rent free and you're eating and everything is free.
Yeah. You don't spend a penny, but we're not paying you. Yeah, absolutely. So it's a very gray area, but they're officially not allowed to take any money or anything from the university in return for playing. So like that's how they get away with the gear, so they can keep all the jerseys and stuff, because it's technically not a gift. It's because you need it to play, so it's provided by the university, kind of thing. But the new thing, so they're allowed to monetize themselves. So there's a lot of companies that go out there and if you want an interview with that player, you're gonna have to pay him. If you want, you can be on the billboard or something, but you're gonna have to pay him. So now, obviously, universities are, using that in their advantage to hire companies, to hire the players, essentially. So because money is, or you can imagine university in the States and the scholarships and the amount of money they get from broadcasting, it might start attracting, the top high school recruit to different colleges, not just Georgia, Alabama, and or basically those two, and Ohio State,
Georgia, Alabama, Clemson, maybe,
that's
Michigan. And
So,
I think that's happening, isn't it, at Jackson State at the moment, because Neon's down there. Deion Sanders is the coach there. As having him there is pulling a lot of talent that way with the money in the NIL. So that's already maybe a small step in that direction of spreading the wealth and maybe getting a bit more competition throughout, getting rid of that disparity, as you say, of top teams being really good and bottom teams not.
Because ultimately, before the NIL, it was about the players putting the best chance on themselves to make it to the NFL. And obviously, you're not going to go, if you're getting offers from Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, or those kind of things. You're not going to say no, because just look at the number of people Georgia got drafted last year. It's 13 players. It's ridiculous. So obviously you're going to go there because it just ups your chance ever so slightly to be seen, because you're going to be on TV more often, and B, have the best coach, the best facility, and all that, and be a better player when you want to become pro. So it's been very similar for the past, I don't know, quite a while now. I think Alabama and Georgia have been at the top for quite some time. But hopefully, I think we're starting to see it change, and it's going to be all the better, I think, for the game. To be fair, it's not just that. There's a lot of players that will just go to university either because their parents went there, or because it's just local and they don't really want to leave. They're still 18 years old at that time, 18, 19 kind of thing.
Still quite impressionable, still haven't made the right.
Absolutely, and families, whatever the condition you are, some people will go to different places because that's just what they want. If Justin Herbert, for example, was never going to go anywhere but Oregon because that's what he wanted to do. And he said when he was a kid he wanted to be a starting QB there, and that's what he did. So it's not just about the money or the exposure, but it very often is.
Very often it is that. But there are other factors like, my parents are both my parents went to that college, their parents, etc. There's a lot of that as well. But as you say, that the top 4 or 5, Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, you can say that because you watch the NFL, and when they give the player intros, how often do you hear University of Georgia, University of Michigan, the Ohio State? You hear that so often. You've got to realize that your chances of making that final step are much improved by going to those big colleges.
Absolutely.
But maybe with that money rights, maybe it will spread a little bit down.
Hopefully, yeah. And the fact that I think, Coach Saban and all of these people that are starting to get it a little bit on the older side might not have as much pull as they used to. Legendary coaches like Urban Meyer. I don't want to say his name because of the type of guy he is.
He was a legendary coach.
But he was a legend at college, absolutely. So, all of that is starting to go away. And when you see, Lincoln Riley and, Jimbo Fisher and that kind of people that just start to bring people just because of them and not just the program. Chip Kelly is another one. I think his name is quite high up in here. He's turned UCLA around, so.
Chip Kelly brings up horrible flashbacks. Stop saying that.
I know, but
it's interesting. A lot of coaches, as you say, do not do well in the NFL, but then revert back to college games and end up, Harbaugh being the prime example of Michigan.
Absolutely,
left the Niners under a cloud, but really turned the Michigan sort of football team around and
absolutely. And it's a good point to see how different the two worlds are when you see these coaches like Mike Rule that just got fired from the Panthers, how good he was when he was a Baylor, and how bad he was when he was the Panthers. And you got to think, and we just said it, you're going to coach kids essentially, 18 years old, 19 years old, very impressionable, and they're here for like 3-year, 4-year max, if they, depending when they join. Versus NFL players who are professional adults, they have family, and they've been in the game for quite some time. They know what they want, they know who they are, and you might have them for 10 years. Like some people have been with one franchise for even more than that.
Or their whole playing career,
their whole playing career, and you're trying to, coach these people in the same way you did with college, and it usually doesn't go very well. And Chip Kelly is an example of that. Matt Rule is another. And I think that's why Saban's never really made the jump. I mean, he did. He was in the NFL for a while, but I think he'll never move because he knows it's just not the same.
It just doesn't have that, as you say, man management style. It might
work
for those kids in high school, and they're very disciplined, very talk down, make you players do what they're told, and that works at college, but.
Yeah, there's also the fact that, if you're in the NFL and you don't like your coach or your coach doesn't like you, you're going to go to another NFL team. When you're at university, it's not just about football. You're here for a degree. You're doing, if your football career doesn't pan out, you
need to have a backup,
Yeah, you need to pass your credit, go to class, have good grades and all that kind of stuff. So you can't just say, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going to go somewhere else, although transfer is a thing. But, there's also the academic side of it. You don't want to flush your whole life down the drain just because football doesn't go well. We all know football careers are on average about 5-6 years old. That's
if you actually get there.
If you get there,
at all, 131 teams with a roster of 53. There's a lot of players trying to get to.
Absolutely.
So, you have to make sure, and I think that's one of the things, as you say, that they're getting that backup, and that fallback position has to be there. So, upping sticks and moving because you don't like the coach isn't really an option for most of them.
No, and you just have to stick it out for 2-3 years. It's not that long, is it? Just stick it out. Try to be the best player you can be, and try and enter the draft and go and be a pro.
One of the nuances of, I suppose, college game is the Heisman Trophy. I think most people will know the name Heisman Trophy if they don't quite fully understand what it is, but they'll have heard of it and they know that
seen the advert.
Past winners have got it and stuff. And what is from the Heisman Trophy? It's a trophy given to
the best player.
The best player.
Yeah, it's the MVP of the league essentially. What Aaron Rodgers won 2 years in a row. At college level is the Heisman. They've got a bunch of. We know we're focused on the Heisman because it's the star, but the Butkus Award, which is the best tight end or linebacker, I can't remember now. But they've got a bunch for our best wide receiver. Linebacker. But they've got best wide receiver, best tight end, best running back, best safety, and they've got a bunch of awards. But obviously, the main one is the with the pose. The one you get is the Heisman. It's quite reputational. Gives you obviously a nice little boost, and you get to be in a Nissan advert forever.
You can never short of an advert.
Yeah, absolutely. It's basically the best player. This day and age, it tends to be quarterbacks because
tends to be your quarterbacks to be your top 4 team.
Unless a running back really goes crazy all season long, they might give it to him or wide receiver. Like Devonta Smith got it a few years back, but
Saquon got it, didn't he?
Saquon got it, yeah, absolutely. But he was out of this world at Penn State. And Devonta Smith was a difference maker at Alabama, so they weren't going to give it to Mac Jones, so they gave it to Devonta Smith.
Absolutely. So who's the favorite this year? Then it sounds like
I think it's Hendon Hooker, the guy from Tennessee. He's playing absolutely lights out right now, and he's the reason they're up there competing at number 2. And very much looking forward to a couple of weeks. Georgia-Tennessee game. That's going to be very interesting. Yeah. That's going to be good. I mean, obviously, CJ Stroud is still up there. He's been playing really well for quite some time now. Quarterback of Ohio State. I got the names here because it changes quite a lot.
One of the guys went down, didn't he? One of the
So Bryce Young, obviously, Alabama, as per usual, Alabama QB. You can't escape here. Caleb Williams. Sorry.
He's a current holder, isn't he? Didn't he win it?
Yeah, he won it last year. Yeah, absolutely.
He won it last year, yes, right?
He did win it last year in his sophomore year. Yeah, so, but he's still on it because he's playing really well. Because he's really good. Maybe it's.
Or is he in a good football? Is he in a good football program rather than?
Yeah, he is. Obviously, it's very hard. To Mike Jones and college QBs very hard to dissect. Different question for the NFL. But yeah, Caleb Williams, who transferred from Oklahoma to USC to follow Lincoln Riley, he's playing really, really well. Doubt he'll win him. Maybe if USC makes a really strong push, but I doubt it. And then Blake Corum, the Michigan running back, will same again. If he has a crazy year from now on to maybe to the playoff and has a massive playoff game, then maybe no, the Heisman is just before the playoffs, so
just before it's handed out.
That won't count towards this. It's regular season only. But still, if Michigan makes a big push and they finish number 3 or something, he'll probably be on the ballot. And then it's a voting of everyone, pretty much.
Journalists, ex-winners, and the Nissan fan, isn't it? The Nissan vote, so the fans get one option. But I think there's ends up being 790 votes and loads of journalists and something, and then the ex-winners. But you don't fancy your Oregon quarterback? I know he's kind of floating around. He's got a chance if you guys make a run, I suppose.
Yeah, Bo Nix has been playing really, really well. The problem is he was at Auburn for 2 seasons before he came to us, and he was good, but he wasn't outwardly. So you're just thinking it's more of a product of the system than him by himself. Although he is playing absolutely lights out. It's possible.
He's got a bit of a mark against it early on the first game, wasn't he?
The first game was really dreadful, and I think. I hate to see big games like that in the first week because we all know what week ones are. Very difficult to predict and very hard to hit the ground running, especially when you hit Georgia. But since then they've been scoring 45 points a game against pretty much everybody. So same again. If he makes a strong push and keeps playing like that, and maybe win a big game against Utah, and then wins the Pac-12 championship against.
He's got to be in the mix. But
he's got to be in the mix, yeah.
It's kind of handed out just before, and there's that whole Heisman curse sort of that floats around, isn't it? If you win the Heisman, you end up blowing the championship game, which
usually
seems to have happened recently. It's maybe winning it isn't the best thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Just on that, talking about the championship, you mentioned CJ Stroud. You mentioned the fact that it's Ohio State. There are 6 unbeaten teams left. Looks like Ohio State are on the march to another championship game. Who do you think is going to stop them? As you say, Tennessee are playing lights out. Do you think they're going to be in and out?
I think you can't look past the SEC, unfortunately. As much as your Ohio State is always up there, I don't know. There's such a big gap between the Big Ten and the SEC. It's going to be and I think they'll make to the playoff. They'll probably, if everything goes well, we're about halfway through the season right now. A little bit more, 7-0, so a few more games to go. I don't know. It's so hard to decide. Clemson is still out there. They haven't lost a game, but they're against it because they're playing in a weaker conference. I don't know. To me, it's gonna, whoever wins that Georgia-Tennessee game is gonna go and end up doing the SEC championship against Alabama probably. There's because they're playing so I forgot to mention the conferences are split into North and South kind of thing, so they don't, otherwise it would be too many games, and the championship is the winner of the South against the winner of the North, usually, which is the best weekend of football. I think it trumps any playoff week. The NFL championship weekend is amazing. It's just great games all around. Everywhere there's just good games.
Yeah, if there's a weekend to try and dip your toe in or find what college football's about, it's those ones.
Championship weekend.
Championship weekend has got to get you to place, and it will get you the flavour of potential players hitting the NFL in a season or two as well.
Yeah. So to finish on the championship, I think it'll be Georgia. I reckon Georgia will probably be Tennessee. I think they're much more experienced than they are. Tennessee is playing really well, but it's they're a really young team and they're on the way up. And Georgia has been there and knows how to play
current
big
champions,
games.
aren't they? They won it last year, so they've been there and done it.
So I reckon it'll end up being a Georgia Alabama, and those kind of games are just going to be 50-50. It's just that's such good teams. It can go either way depending. I think the championship last year, if what's his name, wide receiver doesn't blow his knee, the game is a lot closer than it is. I can't remember. He played Garrett Williams, plays for the Jets. If he doesn't blow a knee in the championship or the whatever, I think there's a bigger chance that the game is a lot closer and Bama can win it. It's going to end up being... So I reckon it'll be Ohio State, Michigan, unless something goes really wrong, and then Georgia, Alabama, something like that in the playoffs. But we'll see. But yeah, so to go back on what you were just saying about the draft and the NFL, because I'm guessing people that are watching this, listening to this, are football fan watching the NFL. The great thing about getting into college football is that when April comes around, you know a little bit more than everybody else because you've watched the players, you've heard the names, and it gets you interested in those players and their development. And it gets me interested in other team because I follow players that I really like, and I get plays for that team, so I'll watch on Sunday if the Niners aren't playing. I watch that game because I want to watch Justin Herbert, or I want to watch Saquon Barkley because exciting player that I used to watch college, and it's a great thing. You start. It's going to take some time because it's so big and there's so many names and all that. It's a little bit overwhelming, but it's another great point to try and get into it, just to know what's going on when people are starting talking about the draft and the process, because it's quite long, from the combine to the draft. Yes, no names you've never heard of. You don't even know where they play for, who they play, and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, so it kind of gives you a heads up on all that analysis, doesn't it? And you go, I watched that guy against this game. He seemed good, and then also from a fantasy football perspective as well, which is obviously huge in the States and starting to get really big over here, and lots of us are playing that as well. It helps you when you're kind of going, I know I watched that guy come through I watched him in Georgia. He's good. He do this, and it gives you that sort of aspect and builds you on your NFL red zone sort of comparison. That sort of, if you're watching red zone, you go, I remember that guy at the Oregon, or Saquon at BYU when he ran over everybody. So you watch them for that. So it does build your appreciation, I guess, of football in general.
Your football knowledge just comes on another level, kind of thing. You have a little bit more insight as to why a player plays a certain way or why he's struggling, because maybe the college he used to play at had totally different system and that kind of thing. Or he blew his knee in college, but you didn't know if you didn't watch the college, and then he comes for the draft. You heard about it at the draft that he had injury issue, but you're not quite sure what or why. So that kind of thing. You haven't
seen him before the knee injury and stuff. It's all that
so that kind of thing. So we're going through this right now with, I'll take an example with Kinlaw, who was absolutely amazing at college, and he blew his knee on his last season. So we're seeing why maybe he's having problems still now after 3 years. It's like, it's not something that just happened. It's something that he's had all his life, kind of thing, and that started to happen when he started playing higher level and faster and that kind of thing. But it's just it's really good just for that. If you're into football, why wouldn't you watch it on Saturday?
It's not like you're watching NFL on this Saturday. That's one of the one of the beauties, isn't it? They've kept Saturday night for college games, and it is different. It does allow you to do both. So if you've got your weekend free and you're sorted out for your Sunday, ESPN's there. And over here, I think we're lucky now in the UK that they are showing so many games. They didn't use. I mean, much like the NFL's got a load more coverage. The college game has really kind of opened up, and the accessibility to the college game is so much easier now.
Because you can,
and stuff like that. It's just right there.
You can get it through. I mean, you can get the ESPN player app, whatever it's called. I can't remember, which gets you any game or every game. But otherwise, BT Sport, ESPN, just Sport, whatever. I say, oh, pick this game because it's good. Just pick the game they're showing because it's probably going to be a good game.
Yeah, they would be showing it otherwise, right? Well,
yeah, exactly. But at least it gets you into it. And, if you're, as I said, if you enjoy watching football, it's a different game. Rules are slightly different, which you'll get your head around pretty fast. It's nothing crazy at the end. There's mainly the catch, mainly if you get a pick and you fall, when you're down, you're down. You don't need to be touched, that kind of thing. But it's football. It's great, and it's 18-year-old running around. Well. Yeah, it's so much faster. They're so much younger, and they're playing against people that aren't as good. That's the thing in the NFL. In the NFL, everybody's pretty much on the same level.
It's the elite
very
level,
close.
Isn't it? Yeah.
It's very, very close. The margins are tiny. At the college level, they're not. Sometimes some people are just way better than other, and it's pretty fun to watch. Not too much blowouts are boring, but
But you can spot those stars who almost are above.
Absolutely,
and he's going to make it. You can tell because they are, so they stand out from everybody else.
Yeah, absolutely.
Najee, brilliant, man. This has been 40 minutes.
Thank you.
It's been great chatting with you. Appreciate it. How do you feel about the Ducks this week? Who have you got?
Oh, I can't remember who we got. Let me have a look. That's the problem when you're doing so many podcasts, and I don't remember. We were on the bye last week. Who are we playing this week? The problem with the Ducks is that they play so late because it's on the West Coast. It's a 3 a.m. kickoff most of the time. I don't get to watch them nowhere near as much. We're playing Cal. That should be an easy win, hopefully, in California. So that'll be nice and warm. Okay, yeah. I was going to say, if people want to know, there's Ohio State, Penn State at 5 o'clock. That should be a good game. Some game recommendation. So that'll be the 5 o'clock. And then the 8:30, Kentucky at Tennessee. Could be a good game. I would actually... Oh, that's at 12, sorry. It's a little bit later. No much at 8:30. I would... Oklahoma State, Kansas State, number 22 against number 9.
The two state, I saw that one actually. Looking at it, the state game, that looks like it's going to be one of the, as you say,
they're really close
both
as well,
within the 25. They're both sort of ranked quite similarly, so that's
and they're quite close to each other as well. I'm pretty sure Oklahoma and Kansas are quite
a bit
in the middle together, so a bit of rivalry there. Yeah, so that could be a good game. I'd say the Cincinnati UCF game might be interesting. I'd keep my eye on that. I know UCF isn't ranked, but that could be a nice little game as a bonus. And then 12:30, 12 o'clock. Is a Michigan game, State against Michigan. That's always kind of fiery and always interesting.
Kind of rivalry because it's interstate, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it'll be close, but you never know. Upset is always a thing that you'll hear, and it's fun to watch it when they happen.
Cool, Najee, appreciate it. It's been a real blast. We'll do it again next week, hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. Hopefully, if my schedule allows, I'm pretty busy working, plus other podcasts.
All the other
this side,
that side, and this side, and if we can squeeze you in, we'd love to have you back, and we'll start talking a bit more in depth as we go on. Brilliant.
Yeah, thank you. No worries.